Everyone, welcome back to the Meme Team podcast, where we discuss the marketing strategies behind viral pop culture moments. I'm Sonia Bashez, and this week I'm joined by Moshe Izakian, a freelance brand marketing strategist who's worked with Lego, Snapchat, Nike, Toyota, and Epic Games. Welcome, Moshe.
Nice to be here. Thank you for having me, Sonia.
Yeah, definitely. So this week we're chatting about a whole bunch of things, but basically how companies are talking to their customers. So some of you may have noticed Salt Altman has a new Twitter persona. And then Disney has built an ecosystem so emotionally loaded that people are going into debt with 5 figures and not regretting spending $1 on it. A FIFA World Cup is happening this year in the US, and the brand activations have started. And then we'll round it out with the Devil Wears Prada 2, which just ran the most coordinated brand blitz since Barbie. So let's get started with OpenAI and Sam Altman. So we've talked about that company a lot here because, one of the biggest things that, happened during the Super Bowl, Anthropic commercials riffing off them and kind of making fun of them was, Sam Altman and Kate Roush, the CMO at the time, basically, coming out with an essay on Twitter saying like, this is why, we're doing this. This is why we're charging, people, we're bringing ads into OpenAI. And basically explaining like the whole thought process, which I thought was too much at the time. Anthropic was basically punching up, and you never want to be the one that's like punching down at like your competitors because you're giving them more attention. Since then, we talked about how they bought TBPN and how we expected this shift in their comms because John Coogan and Jordy Hayes are some of the best communicators out there for tech discourse and just talking about tech optimism and tech in a way that makes people in the tech world feel cool all of a sudden. So we've seen both the shift with OpenAI, which has started talking about how, they're not focused on AI replacing people, but they're focused on the tools that will help humans enable, their new jobs, which is, a huge step, I'd say, at least in the right direction of like, nobody wants to hear that you're going to come take their jobs away and get them fired. But, they're willing to work with a tool that's trying to help make them better. They're not the only ones. You might have noticed that Meta and Mark Zuckerberg are also shifting in that direction. So there must have been some bigger, presentation that was made to all the tech giants to like, hey, maybe we should start talking about AI and, tech being optimistic and innovative and all that. Someone on Twitter identified was that it's better to be cringe than it is to be corporate. And it really seems like he's kind of taking on that persona of like, hey guys, like we just launched a new feature, come check it out. And they're, very short tweets that, seem more human as well. Obviously, it's come a long way since he was the guy that was at YC and like was talking to like founders on Twitter. The other news is that they're also changing their data policy. They're now disclosing your data, your information to their marketing partners, formalizing those relationships with outside ad tech. Have you been paying attention to this? What do you think? Do you think it's a step in the right direction? Are you finding it cringe?
I find it like very much early Twitter where like, yeah, founders kind of showed up and do a lot of like engagement bait. Like, I'll follow this person or reply to this person who shows up, like trying to get the quick loyalty that way, right? I think he's starting to realize like how effective Twitter is to get people to be loyal to him and to the product. Like a lot of the Twitter interactions that I'm seeing nowadays are, hey, I'll switch to this product if you follow me or engage with me, right? He's making that relationship a little bit more direct, which is very much like in the SF spirit right now. Like you have a lot of AI founders. You had the Cluely, the people behind the Friends necklace who was constantly talking to people on Twitter. And I think he's finally using that playbook in the right way. It is a little bit cringy. It's a little bit young, but so far it's seemed to be effective, right? Like, and
Yeah, I found it interesting that you said it's and the examples that you gave were more of like those younger like founders.
mhm.
And I do wonder if that, jab of him being cringe is the fact that he is like an elder millennial, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like Does that mean like we've passed that point where it's like you just don't expect millennials, or I mean at least the elder ones, to be talking to their customer directly, you know? I think that's like, definitely a thing that like the TBPN guys are bringing back, right? Where it's like, now that we have our own, or should have our own like communication playbooks and like styles of how we're talking to customers, like what are those ways that like we've learned, we've talked about here a lot, where it's video is so much more important, right? But then also being authentic while you're, writing and speaking. And I think it's interesting that it comes at a time when AI is a way that a lot of founders are trying to default to, because they're either not comfortable writing their own communications, or they want to like over explain, which is what I thought Altman was doing back when he did the Super Bowl commercial
Hmm.
explanation or whatever. And like, now it's like, well, just try to, talk directly to your customer base and like bring them on your side, and bring them along in this journey as you're building in public, right? I feel like I'm dropping all these like things that are like the popular things to say, right? You're building in public, you're, your founders, the founder led growth, and, all that. And I think like, OpenAI kind of like moved away from that as it grew bigger and bigger. And now they're trying to, revert back to like, hey, we can be a scrappy startup that, is talking directly to like their consumers. And like, here's why you want to like come work with us and not Claude, right? I feel like Claude has that more of that like aura of being for like artists and writers and the creative folks. Whereas ChatGPT kind of has, they're like, a little bit more corporate, a little more boring, probably because, they've been under the Microsoft umbrella for so long,
Right.
Um, but I think this is giving them kind of a chance to change that a little bit. So I'll be curious to see kind of like the direction they go in, because, it is a move that's needed, especially right now when people don't really understand like what AI does or what it can do. But we're also seeing like a lot of backlash towards, data centers being built. And like Dario at Anthropic, is always talking about how like, oh, lawyers, accountants, all these people are going to lose their jobs in the next like 5 years, right? And then we're also seeing a lot of like cultural backlash towards AI, right? We're seeing how there's now what I call, calling the, this like competency porn, where it's like you want people to come out and show you on video, like prove that they know how to do things, that they can talk about things. Because they want to know that you're actually doing it and it's not AI. So it's a really interesting moment. And I think that OpenAI and like Sam Altman are smart to be moving in this direction. And I think that, TBPN, pushes them in that direction. Because I do think that tech overall needs um, a better story, a better narrative about like where we're headed and like how we are trying to be innovative and like do things to improve people's lives, and not just come and get them all fired.
I was thinking about like around how Anthropic was kind of like dropping the ball in terms of
Hmm.
communication the last week or so, because this is all seems to line up really well, right? The acquisition with TBPN, everything that's going on, well, with the trial with the app, but it's also there was something that was happening in the AI community where Anthropic was kind of making changes to
Hmm.
the coding AI, the plans. It was like they were trying to communicate on Twitter about like, oh, we have transparency, we're doing some tests, but it was complete opposite of that. And
Oh, the
as
Claude Pro
Sam,
thing being taken out and then put back in.
exactly,
Yeah.
and it was just like also the it feels like the playbook was waiting to be launched, right? Around, because that's when I started seeing Sam everywhere, especially more like now that there's context switchers, right? And he came in and it's like, we're gonna like look how bad this communication is, and this is where I'm gonna come in and kind of like make my re-debut, right? And
Hmm.
it's also like they're starting to be a little bit more of a praise for founders who are kind of acting more executive and transparent than they used to be.
Hmm.
Not sure if you follow, but for example, Xbox has kind of
Hmm.
been
Yeah.
reclaiming their identity with the new CEO, and that CEO has been doing an incredible job using Twitter to communicate everything that's going on. Even like when
Hmm.
the earnings didn't beat, like something that most CEOs would never really kind of offhand comment about. She's like, this was to be expected and we're going to move on from here. And not even just like that statement that was like very human, very on point on Twitter, on
Hmm.
X, right? It showed how much of a difference and praise there is for CEOs to kind of act a little bit themselves. So all of this has kind of been lighting a fire, I think, under Sam with this
Hmm.
move.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. So we talked about Asha Sharma last week because that is one of the examples I think is like doing really well, where it's like bringing back the brand and like the reason why people fell in love with it in the first
Right.
place, right? And like really defaulting to like listening to gamers and like what they want, lowering prices when like everyone else is raising them, right? Especially in AI. So I think it's like really smart that she is taking to Twitter, and it's not even just Twitter because it's like her Twitter is getting her more press hits because she's being so like open and honest about it, and kind of people taking people along in the journey. And it really seems as if she's working to get people on her side, and it's actually being successful. And I think that that's a similar thing that Sam is trying to do. And I think you're right. I had forgotten about the trial that's happening right now with Elon Musk, and he's coming across as very combative, where he's trying to get smart with lawyers and judges and stuff. And like that's not going to play across well, like in the court of public, right? Where it's like it seems as if Sam is getting more people on his side by being more human. But, doing it on the same week that they're also announcing that, hey, yeah, we're, giving your data to advertisers, and like what pissed people off in the first place back in, February for the Super Bowl. A couple lessons here is this is when like your CEO, your like, subject matter experts should be going, direct, should be going on Twitter and trying to, tweet out the strategy, your thinking behind it, and really trying to couch it in terms that like your customers actually care about, and not just making it about what you're doing. I think that's the missing piece there. Like what's been so successful about Asha Sharma at Xbox is that like she's doing all these things that will get people on her side, and then using that as a way to say like, hey, we're changing things here. Everything's going to be in flux, including our Q1, earnings. And frankly, she just started, so how much can you really expect, But she's using those as like not excuses, but like reasons for why things aren't where you would expect them to be. And I think that's the right way to treat your audience, is like getting them on your side and letting them be the champion, because it's not just, oh, I'm announcing that I'm doing this, but it's like your audience is going to bat for you. They're the ones talking about the great things that you're doing and advocating on your behalf to bring other people along the journey with them. So I think that's a super smart way to do it. But you can't do both at the same time when you're trying to do like the being authentic, but then also, falling back on the things that make people angry, which here with OpenAI is, selling all our data to like, advertisers. But I assume maybe they're assuming that people aren't going to be paying attention to both. But it might come to bite them in the ass at some point.
I think the most important lesson too is just to be able to really really be able to put down a playbook for understanding how to communicate to other people, because like yes, there's like even lessons from the Xbox CEO, from Sam, what they're putting out there, how they're going around engaging in social may not work best for you, right? And it's something you got to kind of keep in mind. Is this going to line up with the tone of what we're putting out there, right? Like as we've kind of started digging into it, it's making sense in the cultural context of, there's other CEOs that are doing something about this, right? There's like there's a little bit of the competition, right? A chance for Sam to step up, but is this friendly, happy-go-lucky cringe going to match up with what they're actually doing when there's a little bit of uneasiness with selling ad data, right? When the conversation about AI is still confusing, right? And as more of these kind of come to light and as more people research, it's a double-edged sword. So you have to really consider, putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, I mean, the double-edged sword of like, if you're taking people along in the journey, you can't then be hiding things from them, right? Because then it's like, well, you're honest about these other things. Why would you then hide this? So totally agree.
Yeah, so the New Yorker came out with a really interesting article going into a really debated topic about this cultural consumer called the Disney adult. It's the way that they framed it are these Disney adults who have been Disney fans for most of their lives, but really take the Disney fanaticism to the next level. They're the type of ones who are really rack up a lot of series debt into going to Disneyland for getting a lot of Disney merchandise. Like some accounts that they mentioned, it was like a college freshman who burned like through 15,000 and ended up with $5 in account. A British woman who's paying like $300 to $400 a month on a Disney vacation club. And it's just really surprising, but also not really surprising profile because a lot of the article goes into how the Disney ecosystem has been very much engineered into this. They're monetizing every part of the experience from skipping the line, which used to be free, now costs extra, airport shuttles, parking. You're having like Disney specific credit cards. What I think this article really brought into light is that how deep the Disney fandom goes, right? It's as a young age, getting you into the ecosystem and reminding you that Disney is a place where you can live out all of your fantasies. And we're basically like this happiest place on earth, even so that some people were reporting that this is a psychological therapy for me, right?
Yeah, no, so it's super interesting. Disney, I feel, is like the perfect marketing example of how every brand would love to be, right? Where it's
Yeah.
like you get them young with like the movies, the cartoons, you get them into the, Disney park system, you get them as they age with older movies like the Pixar, and then you get them into, the Marvel and the Star Wars, cinematic universes. And then you're bringing that back into the parks. And like, I think that was the biggest thing that stood out about this article was like how much of it was attached to feeling like wanting to feel young, wanting to feel safe, like thinking about me as a child and wanting to do this. I mean, one of the examples they talked about was a dad that was like, my parents took me 1 year and then I just kept wanting to go back, but they would take me to cheaper, vacations like, national parks. So now with my kid, I don't mind going into debt because I don't want him to miss out on this experience of being a kid, right? So it's like there's all these levels of feeling that it's not just I want my kid to get this, but I want me as a kid to also, get these feelings. And you mentioned that the psychological safety of feeling like you go back and like you just feel like a kid again. And there's there aren't that many brands that can actually touch people the way that Disney can. And I think like that's the hard part to try to recreate, right? But then I also think that that's the hard part for like the people that are in it, right? Like how do you stop feeling that psychological context for a
Right.
brand when they actively give you and cater to you in this way, right? By creating special limited edition like pins that bring people back, merch, like everything gets created. The fact that the park changes every so often to like bring in the new worlds, right? Like that, one of the recent things that they started talking about is they're reverting back from, the new sequels for Star Wars and making Disneyland be more about the original trilogy because they've realized that people don't care for the new Star Wars. They want to see Princess Leia and Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and like, new sequel like characters be damned, right? So they're hitting
Yeah.
back on that nostalgia. And right now when nostalgia is such a big thing, Disney is one of those companies that can tap into it actively and get people to spend like thousands of dollars on the merch and then just going to like the cruises and the parks and stuff. So I thought that was like, a super like interesting dynamic. Where
Mhm.
it starts to get tricky is like, at what point is this not as poisonous as Polymarket and Kalshi? Going after like the vulnerable people that they know want to like gamble and spend money. Is this not
Right.
as bad spending? I mean, somebody said that they spent like $70,000 to go to like Disney Worlds over like the course of her adulthood. Is the backlash going to turn against the company? Right now people are still blaming the Disney adults, right? And it's like, well, you're the one that's going there, you're spending, like, it's not about you. Like, it should be for kids. Like, they shouldn't even be allowed to go, right? At what point is that going to flip towards, Disney, the company, for taking advantage? I mean, Is it taking advantage? I mean, they are providing a
I
service,
think I
you
think
know,
so,
but you
because
get what I mean, right?
everything I they are providing a service, but they're deliberately engineering everything. Slow, like the decisions they've been making as of late, especially with the parks where the Disney adults coming from, has been towards adult spending, right? It's even interesting that the discourse, like when we're speaking about Disney adults, it's people are saying like, well, I'm an adult who likes Disney, but Disney adults are like these hyper fixated, everything has to be Disney. Like imagine if like someone was obsessed with Hello Kitty and had Hello
Yeah.
Kitty everything. And I think that's what this kind of brought to light, is that
Mhm.
there's sometimes these portions of the fandoms that take it too far, but nobody does it better than Disney. And Disney kind of is leaning into this too much,
Mhm.
and people are starting to wonder, well, is this actually, like, do you realize what you're kind of having a lasting effect? In my opinion, right, like Disney is all about the generational work, right? Think about Lego, right? Lego has had kind of that kid adult trend,
Mhm.
right? Like a lot of adults buying in, but they're doing their best. Their brand strategy has always been to cater to the kid inside you. They always want to pass that love on. What Disney is doing is, its brand strategy is kind of the same. The magical moments that Disney provides all of you, except that it's really leaning hard into the adult and enabling this kind of
Mhm.
behavior to happen with no checks, right?
Mhm.
It's real, like, because this is the money spender. This is what's happening.
Mhm.
Could it be a leadership thing? Could it be, cultural thing? If Disney was to introduce betting, oh my God, that we're talking about opening the floodgates. It's funny that you mentioning Polymarket and call sheet. There was a quote by a president that really stood out to me. Everything is a casino now. And that just kind of goes to show like what we've enabled into this culture. Like nostalgia is everything now, right? And that's what Disney consistently delivers on, right?
Yeah,
And goes to show that decision they're making to move away from the new sequels to nostalgia or
yeah.
sequels. It's all so meticulously planned.
Yeah. No, it's definitely wild, and I think it's funny because you talk about that. Because the thing about that, the commercial that they did for the cruise was like, what I pointed out at the time was that Disney is one of the few brands that you can speak to the past, the present, and the future, and it all just interconnects with every generation, right?
Mhm.
But I think we are starting to see, some things here and there, right? Like, especially here, we live in Southern California. Disneyland is right there. I've noticed that some of the ticket prices are starting to go down, right? The economy sucks and people don't have like money to spend, but I feel like Disney's still one of those few brands that people are willing to like, spend a little bit more. But at the point that it feels like they're taking too much advantage, I think they are going to feel a bit of a backlash. I mean, we're kind of seeing that with Star Wars, right now, like,
Mhm.
and Marvel, two of their huge properties that like, they both have movies coming out this year. And I don't really see them on many people's like, to be watched lists, right? Of like the movies they're excited to see. But I do think that like Disney kind of sits at a point where it's like they have to kind of decide, are they gonna continue trying to cater to Disney adults that like are willing to spend that money, or try to become more like kid friendly, family friendly, right, of inviting kids to come back, and then start getting those new charges of kids to be loyal to Disney,
Right.
so it's interesting battle that they find themselves in.
Like I think one of the bigger lessons to know from all of this is be very clear about what you stand for and who you stand for, and actually cater to them, right? Like if Disney is about happiness for all and bringing those magical moments together, actually facilitate that in the experiences and the product that you're putting out, and like cater to these families, these younger audiences who actually want to get in the system,
Mhm.
not very skewed towards the adults who, yes, have the money and the power, but who are almost like gating the rest of the
Mhm.
audience for coming in. A lot of similar brands like Mattel, Lego, Collector ones are facing the same problem, but they made it very clear in their messaging and the type of marketing they do that they're all about the kids in the future. And I don't think Disney has done that
Mm.
quite yet. which is starting to show in the media. It's starting to show in the park experiences and where it's showing up. It's also very interesting to kind of keep in track that, the how Disney has engineered this. They've created a very good ecosystem that has brought Disney to life, right? There's always something to do, collect, unlock, earn, right? It's also just the power of emotion that
Mhm.
comes into all of this, right? It if all of your marketing is elicits an emotion of safety, right? Like a fulfillment. There is ways that and lengths that people will go to spend on that purchase, right? It's not about the experience, but what the experience for them represents, right? And for them, they're going to come up with 1,000 different reasons why they should be, spending the time at Disney, right? For them, like that $200 ticket is a trip to their therapy park, right?
Mhm.
Or, that collector pin is going to be like a down payment on a collector's item that they'll sell in the future, right? They'll find so many different ways to rationalize it because it emotionally is fulfilling something for them in the moment. So that's like also a way to think about it.
Yeah, those are all like super great points. I think to add to that, I'd say um, Disney's at an inflection point because people don't want to feel as if they're being taken advantage of. And right now, their most hardened like fans are saying that they're okay spending, thousands of dollars and even going into debt to do this because this experience is special enough and it is unique enough and it makes them feel psychologically safe and emotionally tied to the brand. But that also means that you have to be the steward of that. Like they're giving you their trust, their money, to do all these
Mm.
things. So you can't, fuck it up and take advantage of them, right? And that's like the thing where it's like if your fans, your consumers are psychologically and like emotionally tied to you, the burn like could like be so much worse if it seems like you are taking advantage of them. The way that they have kind of been nickel and diming people, right? People don't want to feel as if they're paying for every little thing and it's no longer inclusive of the whole experience. And the
Right.
more that you start, removing aspects of that experience by charging more to try to extract as much money as you possibly can from them, the less that they're going to trust that you actually care about them. And that's kind of where I
Yeah.
see this kind of headed.
It's like microtransactions, right? Everyone is
Right.
starting to see like how every little piece is being monetized, and it's starting to get frustrating when the bill racks up, right?
Right, exactly. We can move on to another global event that I always get super excited about, and that's the World Cup. This summer, the 2026 FIFA World Cup starts with 48 teams across 16 host cities in US, Canada, and Mexico. And it's going to be the largest tournament in history. And brands have already started activating. A few of the ones that I've noticed that I've really liked is Budweiser's "Let It Pour" commercial that features Erling Haaland and Jurgen Klopp in a cinematic fan emotion spot that takes the different countries and their fan bases and kind of puts them interwoven with like cultural moments. Like the Japanese fans have Godzilla, all these moments engineered with like nostalgia in mind. And the point is that the Budweiser bottles feature like moments for each of the countries. So the Brazilian fans remember the 2002 bottle where Brazil won. Chinese fans have the moment that China qualified for the first time. The other one that I saw that was like a standout for me is that Adidas launched dog jerseys for their fans or their fans' dogs. So I thought that was a really interesting play because, here in America, obviously, they're not the biggest, World Cup fans. I think it was like Mexico and Japan had, their jerseys. So that was pretty cool. And then you have Coca-Cola doing their own commercial. Stella Artois has Beckham, Duracell has Messi. So it's all these like famous soccer players, coming out to, participate in all these like brands. And we also have some new types of brand activations, which are really interesting. So Lay's launched a WhatsApp group with some celebrities. Vessi, Beckham, Thierry Henry, Alexia Putellas, and Steve Carell are in the, the WhatsApp group chat, chatting with like their fans. So I thought that was like an interesting way to kind of bring it to where we are now, right? Where it's like people expect to be able to talk to, the soccer players that they're fans of. How much it's actually them versus like their people, we'll see later. But I thought it was like an interesting way to kind of, do something new. One of the things that is standing out is that there aren't that many of like the younger, like, players in here. It's mostly like the big names that have been, playing for years or don't even play anymore, like David Beckham, right? But it's like he's also one of the most famous, soccer players ever. So it makes sense that they would want them. I also haven't really seen very many American players, but you'd think that they'd want to feature some of them in some of the commercials, especially if they're going to be playing here in the US. So have you seen any of these commercials? What do you think? Are you a fan of the World Cup? I know we're both in LA.
First of all, I'm super excited for it to be in town, even though I'm still hoping to find a way to get tickets. I like how accessible this World Cup feels compared to other ones, like Super Bowl level of marketing integrations that are going into so many different themes that are not just about the game itself, but everything adjacent to the game, right? Like the Adidas pet jerseys, right? Really is super awesome. Like I think the Roblox versus FIFA, right? Gaming, great bet on like the younger generation. From what you were talking about, stood out to me was Lay's WhatsApp, right? Because like one thing that as an immigrant, use WhatsApp a lot, right? It's like the primary mode of communication, and the fact that it's a potato chip brand that has has a lot of roots in international markets, right? Like some of the best flavors from Lay's are like from different places. But now that they're using WhatsApp in a unique way that actually feels very rooted in behavior around what these fans do, right? Chatting together, keeping in touch all over the world, different time zone is probably the thing that resonates the most with me. This feels like something that, fans of FIFA would actually do, behavior that I haven't seen from regular playbooks.
Yeah. So I was talking about this, I think it was for around Super Bowl time, just basically the whole idea that because we lack in so many moments of like monoculture, that more brands are going to be trying to activate around these moments. We just had the Olympics earlier this year. We're having the World Cup this year. In 2 years, we're going to have the Olympics, the Summer Olympics here in LA. So it's like brands are going to be looking to tap into something that they know more people are going to be watching, not just worldwide, but for the first time here in America, we're going to have more people paying attention just because it's in America, right? So people by default are just going to be paying more attention. Here's where it kind of, bringing it back to what we were talking about earlier with Disneyland, right? It's the first time that one of the World Cups feels like they're trying to like nickel and dime you for every aspect of the experience, right? Some of those things are, yes, like tickets, which fine, you expect to pay a little bit more because there's more people here, right? Like they're trying to like have fans pay for their transportation to and from the game, which in other countries never happened, right? Like it was all subsidized by the government. They're trying to charge you for the fan parties outside. They want to charge you like a lot of money for that instead of making it free and out in the open the way that it was at other World Cups. So you're starting to see the backlash against, having to pay more and more. And it's not even just, against the United States, but also like FIFA itself, where it's like they're trying to get to extract more and more money from, as many fans as they can. And it's starting to turn, people against it. Like, so some of those things are gonna like, sour people on the World Cup. And I wonder if it's going to sour people on the brands that are also actively trying to like promote the World Cup. This is a huge reason why so many brands aren't, putting out ads yet, even though it's literally like a month away now, which is kind of wild because like I feel for like previous World Cups, like you're gearing up for it in months in advance to get people excited and participating. I feel like we don't even have a song for this year. Like usually like the World Cup
That is
song
true.
is like
Wow.
a huge thing that like, people pay attention to. I mean, I'm personally excited. I love the World Cup. I like watching, it every 4 years. Seeing how, the different countries kind of come together and like play, seeing the best, players out there in the world. And much like the Super Bowl, I've always liked the commercials. There's so many of from like my childhood that I remember like years, later because they were so, freaking cool. And I feel like this year hasn't really, done all that. And then maybe it's because we're faced with like, so many ads, happening all the time. But, usually there's like a cool enough commercial that like makes it out into, the monoculture because it's so cool. So those are, lessons that, you can take here of like how you want to take the moment or like the event and then remix it to make sense for your brand and how people you think about you. Like the WhatsApp one, I mean that's the perfect one, right? Because it's like that's where people are like doing group chats. Yes, we have iMessage as well, but WhatsApp is, kind of where more of that happens. And then, the Adidas, jerseys are like, that's still tapping into like an emotion, right? Of
Right.
like, let's get, the dogs involved as well. And I like that they put it with like the dogs that match those countries, right? Like the Shiba
Right.
Inu with like the
That was
Japanese.
really good touch.
And then like, there was a Chihuahua wearing the Mexican one. Clearly those are like the ones that stood out the most because they're iconic dogs that are like, part of those countries and their culture. But yeah, those are the things that, people remember,
I think like now that I think about like of what the way that the marketing has been approached, it's probably because just like in general, football has always been like a very small like audience, and it's hard for maybe marketers to kind of justify, hey, we should just go all in and for this audience, and does it make sense, especially with like an international organization who has its own rules. Yes, it has some presence in the US, but might be kind of temporary. How many of our audience is actually going to be there? So that might be like kind of the uneasiness of why we're not seeing like the full on investment from the brands jumping in, right?
Mhm.
Which is fine, right? Like it's great that we're at least seeing some participation. Um, Hopefully this, like the success that comes from this, the lessons that they learn will just excite them to participate in the future, right?
Awesome.
The last topic, something I'm really excited about, is the Devil Wears Prada. It's slowly becoming an evolution of this brand playbook for movies that has been happening since the Barbie movie marketing. It's something that I really like to talk about, how Barbie kind of created this universe based on its IP and invited everyone to come into it, right? And it was very much collaborations and brand partnerships led, right? It was basically anyone and everyone who could use the color pink or the name Barbie to kind of jump into it. And over time, we've seen it evolve a little bit, get smarter. And this is like almost Brand Playbook 3.0 with Devil Wears Prada 2, right? Because this time it's not just about let's do every partnership all around, but how do we tastefully build this universe that feels like the movie's almost happening in real time, right? From the plot that involves TikTok to the type of smart collaborations that are happening with the brands who are extending the storyline into our real world, right? So, like, let's say versus having a shoe collab, right? You have Starbucks actually creating drink orders that each person would have in the movie, but also having that like having interns run it around to deliver it to those people, right? You have the cerulean, right, color kind of make its way into actual packaging in the real world. Everything has been so tastefully curated to bring the world of runway to life. Like even having like a podcast that kind of has ex-stylists talk about the life working behind these magazines, right? The fact that yes, there's been a lot of lead time gives this brand playbook a lot of meat to it. It's been done so tastefully well, right? There's a double-edged sword to this, though. This film is 20 years old, never really lost its cultural relevance, right? Like it almost became like predictive of the real world, right? So the fact that, like Meryl Streep has been kind of joining hands on the jokes, right? You got the AI art that was kind of created for it, feels really in touch with the world, but how much can you build that universe out without it feel like it's overwhelming, right? And as someone who's very excited about the way that Barbie was brought to life, it had a lot with its IP that could be very malleable. Devil Wears Prada is still feels a little bit niche, right? It might not appeal to all fashion fans, right? So it has that extra challenge of appealing to everyone who might have not seen that movie, right? Devil Wears Prada 2 campaign was very more on like, we want to reward the people who really love our movie. It's niche but not niche. So
Yeah. I think one of the things that like stood out for this one was it did
mhm,
seem more muted than like, I mean Barbie was like far reaching, right? I mean, I remember
right.
you did the tweet, right, of like putting all the brand partnerships together. And like, these ones it just seems more like spread out, which I think is another, thing of like is there like a monoculture when it's like all these things aren't really being seen by everybody. The other thing is like how much they're tapping into that nostalgia of like, the film being around for 20 years. It's more of a
Mhm.
cult hit and moments of it became like when is the pop culture and like they're just referenced now, right? Like the Cerulean bit, like everyone talks about that, right, as like
Right.
one of the seminal moments in the film. So the fact that they are using that to do these tie-ins makes sense. I do want to point out that one of the ones I don't know how much I like it in the sense of like it doesn't make sense for like the movie because Miranda Priestley would never be caught wearing Old Navy.
Yeah.
But Meryl Streep, wore an Old Navy sweatshirt on the Colbert show.
Hmm.
And so it's like a, wink, wink, like, we're talking about this. But then also it seems like a cash grab because it's like she would never, wear this. So like we're just tying it in to try to like, have as much brand partnerships as we can, right? Like on the one hand, I respect because I'm like, okay, you're referencing all the things, right? But then also maybe you're doing too much. Like most of the brands that would be featured in high fashion, most people aren't gonna be able to afford, right? So Old Navy kind of gives people a little bit more access to things that are related to the movie, right? That was one of the things I liked about Barbie, where it's like it did seem like there were so many disparate products that you could participate in some way without it being like, oh, you have to buy a Barbie,
Right.
So that's kind of been cool to kind of see that whole thing happen. The one thing is
Barbie's brand is very
yeah,
malleable,
yeah.
right? Like it at the base of it, it's a toy. It's got a lot of pink. You got Devil Wears Prada again, which is a little bit more like niche fashion community, which is like you can do a lot with dresses, but it really depends on its characters, right? Like even in Barbie's movie marketing, right? It didn't necessarily use the character of Barbie that much, right? Which is
Hmm.
why it was like easier to digest, right? But here you are, like the characters really carry the movie, so it's really an
Hmm.
IP balance,
Right.
right?
Yeah. I mean, even the Wicked one, because I remember, walking around Target and it's like you see cleaning supplies with like, the Wicked colors, the green and pink, and I'm like, this has gone too far. It's just
Yeah.
like, trying to find some form of like brand relevancy. One thing too that I'm like noticing as we're talking about it's like Barbie, Wicked, and Devil Wears Prada is how female centered these films are. Women are the ones who buy products, who make the decisions for the household. Like at a time when it's so hard to get female centered movies to even be made, right? That's not where like Hollywood is focused. So it is very interesting that these are the ones that have this huge like brand marketing force behind them. And maybe that says something to Hollywood about the types of films they should be making if they know that women are out there spending all this money to participate in these worlds because they love them and, have made them become as popular as they are.
I think it's like, and I think these are also like pressure tests, right? Maybe could be for because they're more female centered, right? Like they're niche centered. Like, is this playbook good enough for something that we want to bring males into, right? Like
Mhm.
something that's going to be for the more bigger universes, could be Marvel, or
Mhm.
like I know that Mattel is definitely considering something like this for Hot Wheels, right? That could be the approach to it. I was surprised that it hasn't taken off as much since Barbie or Wicked. This is like the next big one to do the whole universe approach to it, right? Why this movie, right? You could do it for any,
Well, could
sequel.
you?
I feel like it, right? Like I
Well,
wouldn't
maybe
expect it
that's
for
what I'm trying to
this.
argue, right? Like maybe
Yeah.
it's because it is more female coded. And then you also are going after women who, are the ones that are buying things, right? Whereas for, for male centered movies, maybe it's not. Cause I mean, we've had what, Mortal Kombat. I mean, what are other like male coded ones? I don't want to say Star Wars and like Marvel because like, those could be both. But yeah, it just is
Super
interesting that
Mario, Super
yeah,
Mario
Super Mario.
Galaxy
Yeah, Super Mario is like,
could have
what
really
does that
gone
mean for
for it.
kids, you know?
Yeah, but
Yeah, but they could
that
have gone for it though too,
they
right?
could
Because
have
it's like,
gone
oh,
for it.
you
That's
you
easily
get
one that they
kids.
could have done, but they
Yeah.
didn't really lean into.
Hmm.
And they kind of did a little bit for the second movie, but it was like it's funny because that's how the movie got leaked in the first place. Super Mario Galaxy was
Mm.
a lot brand collaborations they were doing that
Mm.
showed off the logo. Yeah, you're right. Maybe it is.
Or maybe that they're getting to the point of like the people are getting used to it and are going to turn against it because it's like, oh, Barbie already did it, Wicked did it, now Devil Wears Prada. Is that something we're going to continue doing for all movies going forward, or do we just kind of have to come up with new ideas?
Yeah, because what does it evolve from now? Have we reached critical point and that's it?
Hmm.
Does it come down to budget? Does it come down to like we actually have enough IP to play with? One thing that was interesting to me is that usually um, uh, brands would be openly pitching themselves and be widely accepted to get into this, but brands had to compete for this one. So maybe it is like an exclusivity factor, right? Like only certain brands were allowed to participate in this universe, right?
So Barbie, it all seemed to like fit. There were maybe a couple outliers, but definitely with Wicked, it did feel like there was a cash grab of like,
Yeah.
doing anything and everything. So I feel they did pull back with Devil Wears Prada to be a bit more curated about like what brands they're working with so that it all made sense with like the movie. So that's something to think about is like you still always have to bring it back to your brand, right? Like it can't just be, oh yeah, we're going to partner with them and then hope that that brings us sales, right? If it doesn't actually make sense for what you're trying to do.
And I think like another big lesson from this is like curation is going to be the biggest part of this, right? Like you have to be very much thoughtful about who you're going to be working with and how does it make sense, right? Because this playbook will probably reach that shelf life, right, at this point. And if you're not intentional about who you're going to be working with, and like you're going to get the backlash that Wicked had, even though it might not have been stated, to does this make sense for all audiences, like Devil Wears Prada too, right? Because we could argue that all three movies, Barbie, Wicked, and Devil Wears Prada, did great with the female audiences. But how are you going to make this something that resonates with everyone, right? I haven't really seen anyone talk about if Barbie reached a lot of males. Devil Wears Prada 2 definitely didn't. Wicked,
I mean, it would have had to if it was $1 billion,
opportunity.
right? Couldn't just be women.
That's true, but female, they were
Yeah.
definitely very female centric.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
that's
But
that's
anyway, it
a
goes to show, I guess, that men
yeah.
are willing to go to, female-centered movies. I mean, I have seen a lot of, men. I mean, you're talking about Devil Wears Prada as like a, thing that you found interesting. Did you go watch the movie yet?
I haven't yet. No, it's on my list. I was actually gonna go rewatch the first one
Yeah.
to remind me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it is interesting that it dropped the weekend before the Met Gala, which is happening today.
right?
to kind of have like that tie-in of like this is like the fashion weekend, right? So it is something that can cross over to male audiences, and should show Hollywood that they should make more movies like this.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So a couple of takeaways from me are that you have to figure out how to communicate to your audience in a way that'll get them to be emotionally tied to your brand. I think Disney obviously is doing that really well, by being able to tap into nostalgia, and like getting the whole family involved, from like children on up to adults, and grandparents, but you also have to be the steward for their feelings and the way that they think about your brand, and you don't want that to sour because you're trying to nickel and dime them, for how they spend their money with you. I think that's also a thing with like OpenAI, that's like they're figuring out that like we have to be able to talk to our consumer more authentically and more direct than we have, because like over explaining, or getting defensive is not working for us. So we have to be able to go to them and like talk to them, and have the CEO Sam Altman look as if he's a real person and not just some corporate mouthpiece, right? Asha Sharma is doing that as well at Xbox. She's doing it really well, and I think that that's a lesson that like CEOs should take, that like you need to learn how to speak the language that your consumer is going to understand, and have it be about them, so that they then go champion you out there. I think that's part of what's failing right now with the World Cup, right? Like you're pissing off the people, the fans that like love soccer more than anything and would be willing to spend money, but you're nickel and diming them and making them feel like you don't actually care who goes there, as long as there's a warm body to sit there, and not like the true fans that feel the passion for the sport.
I think the biggest takeaway for me for all of this is really knowing your consumer well, right? From the way that Sam has been showing up, right? Like really knowing that who he's going to be talking to, the people who he wants to reach out to are going to be a little bit younger, right? Who are going to be these young founders who are looking up to him, and in a time where people are kind of are looking to CEOs to be a little more transparent. That's a big win for him, right? Even though it's coming at a cost at maybe being cringy, and he has to balance it. Then you got Disney, right? Who's running to this interesting challenge of like these Disney adults almost overpowering what they're really standing for, and the way that they're communicating it with these like pricing out the families, the way that their entire ecosystem feeds this subset of adults, Disney adults, who are making it hard for their real brand values to shine through. Whether it's by design or whether it's unintentional, they really have to think about that. Then you got the World Cup was doing amazing at actually finding different ways to communicate this whole fandom to the international market, right? Like they're doing it in a way that in America that we're kind of used to around the big game, but also like around very much the way that international audiences live in America with the WhatsApp, with young audiences around Roblox. And you got to be very intentional about what you curate, right? What you want these movies to communicate, right? Are they going to be about a world that we're bringing yourself into? Is this something that, is this niche accessible? Is it not? We're starting to get blitzed by a lot of these ads and collaborations from all over the place. So there's a lot of like communications lessons along the way that all four topics are coming across for me.
Yeah, definitely. It all just kind of, came together in that way. It's very funny. Okay. Well, thank you for joining me. How can people find you?
They can follow me on X at Moshe Isaackian, and same place on LinkedIn too, /Moshe Isaackian.
Awesome. And then you can follow me at Sonia Bishez everywhere, and the podcast at Meme Team Pod on YouTube, and Meme Team Podcast on Spotify and TikTok. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.